All right, guys, so we have our profile form here, our create profile form. Now we need to add functionality to it. So we want to submit it to an action. So I'm going to go back to VS Code and I'm going to go into my actions profile.js, and let's go right under the get current profile, and we're going to create an action to create or update a profile. All right, so let's export const, and we'll call this create profile. And then let's see, we're going to have a couple parameters here. So the form data that's submitted. And another thing I want to do is redirect after we submit the form. Okay, so we're going to actually pass in the history object, which has a method called push that will redirect us to a client-side route. Okay, so we're going to pass that in as well. And then in order to know if this is if we're updating or editing a profile or creating a new profile, I'm going to have a parameter called edit that I'm going to set to false by default. You could create a completely separate function for editing or updating if you want, but it's so similar that I'd rather just have a parameter and just add the logic into this function. All right, so let's go ahead and say async dispatch, and we're going to do, let's do a try catch. Oops, try catch. And since we're sending data, we need to create our config object. So let's do const config, and we'll set that to an object with headers, and we just want the content type. We'll set that to application/JSON. All right, so now what we want to do is make the request, and just to remind you, we're making the request, we're making a post request to API/profile. That's the route to create a new profile or update. Remember that we made it so that we could also update with that route. So let's do const res equals await axios.post /API/profile. Then we want to pass in the form data and the config. Okay, and then once that happens, all I'm going to do for as far as dispatching to our reducer is the get profile. So same thing here, because it's going to return the profile. So I'm actually just going to copy this and pass that in. So the payload is going to be the res data, which will be the actual profile. Now I also want to set an alert that says that the profile has been updated or the profile has been created. So let's see, we already have set alert brought in, so we just need to dispatch that after this. Okay, so we'll say dispatch, and we'll pass in here set alert. Now remember, it might be updated or created, so I want the message to be different depending on that. So for the message, I'm going to say if edit is true, then say profile updated, else then say profile created. Okay, now as far as what we want to do next, if we're editing it, I'm not going to redirect. I'm just going to stay on the page. If we're creating it, then I want to redirect. So let's just put an if statement here, and let's say if not edit. So if we're creating a new profile, then let's take that history object and let's call the push method, and let's redirect to /dashboard. Okay, so redirecting in an action is a little different. We can't use the redirect like we do in the components, like return, redirect, or whatever. So we have to pass in this history object, which has the push method on it. So as far as the data, as far as the error, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did up here, dispatch the profile error with the message and the status and so on. So we'll do that. But we also want our validation errors in an alert. So I'm going to copy from the auth.js actions, and we're going to do, let's see, we're going to do the same thing we did right here, where we get the errors from response data errors, and if there are any, we loop through and we just output them in an alert. So I'm going to copy that and put that right above this dispatch here. So for instance, if we forget the status or something like that, or forget the skills or any required fields, then that will show in an alert. All right, so I think that looks good. Let's save it. And we don't have to add anything to the reducer because we're just using get profile and profile error, which are already taken care of. So now we're going to go into our create profile component, and we have to implement this. So let's bring in up top. Let's bring in, let's see, we're going to need our action. So create profile, and that's going to be from actions/profile, and from the router, let's see, we're going to say import from the router. We're going to use link, and in order to use, you know how we pass that history object in, we have to use something called with router. So we're going to bring that in from react router DOM, and this will allow us to redirect from the action. All right, so I think that's all we have to bring in. So let's go down to the very bottom here, and let's do the usual. We need to implement React Redux Connect, so we'll export it, and let's see, inside here we're going to do a map state to props, which we'll create in a second, and then our action of create profile. All right, so let's add the map state to props. Okay, so from the state, I'm going to pull in is authenticated. Actually, wait a minute. Do I need is authenticated? Actually, I don't need is authenticated. So I actually don't think we need to map any state to props. So yeah, let's get rid of that, and let's just put null here. Okay, and then for the prop types, we're going to have our action of create profile, which is a function, so ptfr. All right, now let's go up top here, and let's see, for our props, we just want to bring in our action, create profile. So this create profile we want to call on submit, right? So let's create an on submit, and we want to e.prevent default, and what we want to submit is our action. So we want to do create profile, which is going to take in form and history. Now this history, we actually have to destructure this. So we're going to put, because you can access props.history. So we're going to pull it out of the props like that. Okay, now in order, one thing I forgot to do down at the bottom here is if we're going to use that history, if we're going to pass that in, we need to use with router. So down at the bottom, we're going to wrap right here inside this parentheses. I'm going to say with router, and we just want to wrap the component name like that. Okay, not which router, with router. If we don't do this, it's not going to allow us to pass in that history object and use it from the action. Okay, so that's what this is for. So I think we're good. We just need to add our wait a minute, I just put form here. This should be form data. So we're submitting all the fields that are in that form data state. And we just have to make this run on submit. So let's go to our form tag, and let's say on submit, and let's do E, and then on submit, like that. Okay, so we'll save. Let's go back. So we have an error. Con submit is not defined. Let's see, 43 con submit. On submit is not defined. Oh, I forgot const. Okay, so let's try to submit without anything, and we get status is required and skills is required, because remember, on the back end, those are the only two fields that are actually required, and we're getting in that response, that profile error, and we're putting that into the alert. Okay, so let's actually try to create a profile. So let's say Sarah is a we'll say junior developer. Company, let's say I don't know, we'll do like Websoft Inc. and website websoftinc.net. Location, we'll say New York. So skills is required, so we'll say HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We won't do a GitHub username. Short bio, we'll say I am a junior developer, and I have been studying web dev for 3 years. And then as far as social network links, we'll just go ahead and put one in here. We'll do a Twitter. So we'll say twitter.com/Sarah Smith 123. And let's try it. So submit. All right, we get a profile created, and we get redirected to the dashboard. Awesome. And you can see we get has now because she has a profile. Now, the alert was gray, and if you want to, I mean, that's the default, but if you want to make it green, then we can go into our actions where we dispatch the alert right here, and we can add a type. So let's see, we want to go after the ternary operator here, and we just want to put in the type of success, and that should make it green. All right, cool. So I think we're all set as far as creating a profile. Just to make sure, we'll go to our Mongo Atlas. I always get that password wrong. Okay, so let's look in our profile collection. Oops. Okay, so let's see. We'll go down here, and you can see that this is Sarah's profile. We have a skills array, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, company, status. We have a Twitter link. Awesome. So in the next video, we're going to start to develop the dashboard. We have we want to put our buttons here to edit the profile, add a experience, education, and then we want to list those out. Also have a delete account button. So we'll start on that in the next video.